Hey, deserving listeners, I'm sure all of you know that the verdict is in regarding the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. And I've taken some notes, so I'm going to be looking at my notes to make sure that I stay on track here. I've heard a lot of people with various different reactions. I've heard a lot of anger, a lot of fear, a lot of worry about what this means. A lot of people saying, it's yet another setback for victims, for women, for feminism. And then I hear a lot of people on the other side, a lot of people expressing a lot of joy, a lot of validation for men who have been victims of IPV, validation for anyone who's been abused by someone who looks like Amber Heard. And I also see people in the middle where they don't know what to think. And also a lot of people attacking each other. What I want to say to that is we don't need to attack each other, in my opinion. I've been saying this from the beginning. We're all on the side of victims. We're all against perpetrators. We're all against sexism and misogyny in the patriarchal system. We will continue to fight for victims' rights, all of us. We will continue to fight against victim oppression and systemic victim oppression and systemic misogyny. Regardless of how you feel about this case, we all stand together on these issues, regardless of where you stand. Do you stand with Amber Heard? Do you stand with Johnny Depp? It doesn't matter, because none of us know what really happened. It's reasonable, in my opinion, to be pro-Amber in this situation. It's also reasonable, in my opinion, to be pro-Johnny Depp in this situation. It's also reasonable to say, I don't know what to think, or they both seem like people that I don't want to hang out with, or whatever. There are people on the fringes who are pretty loud online who will say some pretty awful things. They're pro-Johnny Depp, but they say really misogynistic things, and that's happening for sure. Or people who are really pro-Amber Heard who will say things like, men can't be abused, that kind of thing. When someone says they're pro-Johnny or pro-Amber, it's somehow equated with those fringe points of view, which of course it doesn't necessarily mean that. So the jury found that both Johnny Depp and Amber Heard were both defamed. They awarded more money to Johnny Depp, $15 million to Johnny Depp, but the judge capped the punitive damages to $10.35 million and $2 million to Amber Heard. The headlines, though, will say Johnny Depp won and Amber Heard is a liar, that kind of thing. More specifically, though, they found that Amber Heard did indeed write those statements in question in the publications, because that was up for debate, that she didn't actually write it, and thus she shouldn't be sued. The jury found that she was indeed referring to Johnny Depp by implication. She didn't name him by name, but everyone understood she was talking about Johnny Depp, and the jury found that to be true. They found that her statement was false. I think the jury would say, yes, Johnny Depp had abused or mistreated Amber Heard for sure. But the way that she talked about it in the press, she made it seem like she was this innocent victim who had never done anything in return or never abused him as well. As a jury member, I could see someone saying, yeah, was Johnny Depp abusive? Sure. But she was too, from the evidence given. And so for her to claim that she is this abuse victim, full stop, is just not true. I could also see a juror finding that, well, it's possible that she was a victim, but the way that she testified indicated that she will lie sometimes, because there were moments when she was on the stand and she was clearly lying, or there was a strong indication that she was lying at times. Does that mean she was always lying? No, I actually don't think she was always lying. I think she was a majority of the time telling the truth. But there were times when I was, particularly that side-by-side photo thing, I'm like, why are you evading this? Just say you put a filter on it. Big deal. If you are a juror and you see someone on the stand lying, I think you could conclude, well, how do I trust anything she was saying in court, and really ever? Because she was telling her therapist, she was telling the forensic psychologist a lot about maybe she was always lying. I don't know. She seems to be lying, which makes me wonder as a juror, maybe she lies all the time. They found that she wrote the statement. They found that she was referring to Johnny Depp. They found that the statements were false. They found that her statement was made with the intention of harming Johnny Depp, because that's malice. And they found that Johnny Depp was indeed financially harmed. They also found that one of Johnny Depp's lawyers made a defamatory statement about Amber Heard, and it too was false, and it harmed her financially, and that's why they awarded her $2 million. So people have been asking me if I think the verdict is right or just. And I will say, I do not know. I've been saying this from the beginning. I don't know. I really don't. I have been around the block enough times in life and with clients to know that when I work with the couple for a long time and 3 years in, I suddenly am given some information or I see it from a particular angle and it completely shifts how I see the situation. All I can tell you, and I've been saying this from the beginning, is I feel really bad for both of them. Really, I do. I feel bad for Amber Heard, truly. I feel really bad for Johnny Depp, but honestly, I feel particularly bad for Amber Heard, particularly now that she's lost. If she suffers from borderline, which there's a good chance that she does, a lot of this is just a product of her trauma defenses that she developed when she was very, very young. You know, you could say she's to blame for the behavior if it did happen, as a lot of people think it did. But I've worked with people with borderline, and it is so hard to regulate one's emotions, to see things without distortions, to not be overreactive. It's so hard for them, and they have so much shame. If Amber Heard does indeed have borderline, I seriously worry about her hurting herself. Really, I do. From where I stand, I just feel bad. Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, massive abuse growing up. They met, they fell in love, they started to have conflict, they started triggering each other in this very common way that I work with many couples. They start to retreat into their defenses. Johnny starts to avoid and drink and drug more. She starts to lean in more, pursue, plead, attack. And the two of them will have big fights, and then they make up and they apologize. They try to make it work. They get in big fights. They try to make it work. They get in big fights. They apologize. They both go to therapy. They go to couple therapy. Johnny Depp goes to drug treatment to become clean and sober. He works really hard on a lot of that. I think he still has a lot of work ahead of him. But, you know, they worked really hard. Traumatized individuals, it's hard. It is so hard. The amount of triggering that happens on a daily basis, particularly when you're in a fight with your spouse, it's overwhelming. I've worked with couples who come to me every week. They're on board. They want to work. They show up, and 3, 5, 6 years in, they're still massively triggering each other because they've been so traumatized growing up. And they get so angry and so hurtful to each other. And they're in so much pain, and then they come back in the next week and they say, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And we work on it, and we work on it, and we work on it. And I get down in the trenches with them. It's much easier for me because I'm just with them for an hour. They have to live with their traumas all week long, all day long, all year long. But they work on it and they work on it, but they still hurt each other. They still overreact. They still distort. They come back in a session. They get centered. They apologize. They cry. They rededicate themselves. They try. It's too much for them. They trigger each other again. A lot of hurt, perhaps even abuse. They come back in. They work on it. It's hard. And these are people that show up every week that don't have other issues that are compounding the problem, like poverty or severe mental illness or drug addiction. And it's so hard. It is hard. And that's what I see when I hear all those tapes and I hear about all those accounts between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. That's all that I hear, honestly, as just two people trying to make it work, triggering each other's trauma, hurting each other's feelings, getting defensive, escalation of conflict, trying to make it work, apologizing, being soft at times, being triggered and angry at times. That's what I hear. And there's so many couples like this. Couples that you think are doing fine. Friends of yours who are doing this to each other at home, they don't show it to you. It happens. It's common, very common. It's unfortunately very common to be traumatized and then triggered by your partner. So a big question here is, was this verdict justice? Is this just? On one hand, maybe not. A lot of people see it that way. A lot of people see it as, is this just another time in which the system upholds the patriarchy and it protects men who abuse, protects men in power who abuse? I've been thinking about this for a long time now, that there's a fair chance in 10 or 20 years that we're going to look back at this trial and the verdict and the way everyone reacted, the people standing outside the courtroom with the picket signs, the online statements, the tweets, that in 10 or 20 years, we're going to look back and we're going to see it the same way, or at least similarly to the way that we currently see the way that we treated Monica Lewinsky. She was attacked by almost everyone. All the jokes, the slut shaming, the misogyny, and she's a 22-year-old intern being, you could say, manipulated by the President of the United States of America. Seen in a different way, they just had an affair. But at the very least, why was she being attacked? Why would people ridicule her? And back then, I don't remember anyone talking about how society and the comics and the newspapers and the conversations that people were having, I don't remember anyone talking about the fact that this might be a manifestation of misogyny and hatred of women and sexism. Are we looking at another Anita Hill situation? I'm old enough to remember when those hearings were going on, and I remember almost everyone believing that she was lying, thinking that she's a joke. The Coke can situation, I remember everybody saying, that's just so stupid. Now we look back and we're like, I think we were all wrong back then. Are we going to do that in 10 or 20 years about Amber Heard? The O.J. Simpson verdict. Most experts agree that this was yet another abusive ex-husband getting away with murder, literally. But at the time, a lot of people thought that he was innocent. Now, you don't find a lot of people that believe that anymore. Are we going to do that in 10 or 20 years about Amber Heard? Lindy Chamberlain in Australia, being accused of murdering her own child, mostly due to sexist ideas about women and emotion, in my opinion, and other experts. Amanda Knox, being ruthlessly slut-shamed by the media and wrongly convicted of murder. Britney Spears, the way she was treated. Now when we look back, we're like, that we were part of the problem, society. And of course, it's easy to look back if you're young or you don't remember to be like, I wouldn't have been like that. You probably would have been. All you got to do is look at all the comics making. Comics don't make jokes unless people laugh at them. When you see David Letterman and Jay Leno and everyone making the jokes and everyone's laughing, no one's booing, it indicates that at the very least, the vast, vast majority of people were on board with those ideas, and so would have you. And I probably was too. Janet Jackson during the Super Bowl. Vanessa Williams. I mean, at the very least, we'll look back and say there was a contingent of Johnny Depp fans that should have been put in their place. At the very least, we'll say that, because I'm sure all of us would say that now, right? Other questions that a lot of people are worried about is, does this set back the MeToo movement? Are the misogynists going to use this as an excuse to disbelieve victims? Are police officers going to use it to disbelieve victims? Yeah. See, I always told you, those victims are always lying, or they frequently are. Women, that kind of stuff. And something I'm truly terrified about is, are victims going to be afraid of coming forward? Particularly if the perpetrator's a rich, powerful man. I mean, even if you think you have a good case, the threat of drastic legal consequences and just being dragged through a court case where you get everyone and anyone who will say crap about you, put them on the stand, and then you just have to sit there and all of it has to be publicized on YouTube. If you're a victim of any sort, I'm guessing this is chilling. Just think about a woman. She's currently being victimized right now by a rich, powerful man. And she saw what happened at this trial. Is she going to be like, well, I have a pretty good case here, but it's just better I just don't say anything. So I'll just put up with it and I'll continue to get victimized? I'm terrified of that. Are rich, powerful men going to be emboldened by this? Will there be an increase in victimization of people? I don't know. I'm also worried about continued stigmatization of people with borderline or histrionic. Is this going to result in people denying people of PTSD? People that come forward with actual trauma and PTSD and they're, we've heard this one before. So I'm terrified. I'm really worried about all those things. On the other hand, maybe this was justice in a really significant way. The Me Too movement and all the things that we've been doing over the past decades to push forward feminism, to push forward victims' rights, to push against misogyny, to push against the system. The Me Too movement was a part of that, but we've been at it for a very, very long time, long before I was born. So all of that is, of course, wonderful. We have a long way to go, but we've come a long way. However, during the Me Too movement, it became simplified as you have to believe all claims. And no rational person within the Me Too movement believes that. Nobody believes that. There are people who do, but no rational human being, no rational feminist, no rational Me Too movement activist will say that every single claim has to be believed if it's by a woman. That doesn't make any sense. Science doesn't back that up. There are a small percentage of people who will lie. Absolutely. It's very small, And that has to be, that has to be always emphasized. It's like 3%, 5%, I can't remember. It's very, very small, maybe even less than that, 1%, I don't know, very, very small. And I've been saying this for years, long before the MeToo, man. I've been podcasting and being a professor and a therapist for a long time. The way that I like to put this is that when someone is, say, mugged on the street, a woman is walking down the street and someone in the middle of the night, someone pushes her down, punches her in the face, takes her purse. Do you think she calls the cops? Yes. Do you think she tells her friends? Yes. Do you think she tells her parents? Yes. Do you think she goes to the hospital? Yes. Do you think she tweets about it? Maybe. She is vocal. She will say, oh my God, I got mugged. Now, take another situation. Another woman at work is sexually assaulted by her boss, powerful rich man. How many of those women report it? She might not even know it's wrong. That's another problem. Everyone knows that mugging is wrong. Not everyone knows that being sexually harassed at work, felt up or something, or just flat out sexually assaulted, right? Forced into a corner, Harvey Weinstein kind of stuff. The fact that some people don't even know that they were victimized, that they don't even know that that's a crime, is a problem, right? Let's say that they do know. How many of those people come forward? Well, very few. It's a small minority of people who actually come forward. Why? Because of society, because of the justice system, because of education, because of us, because of our collective culture. Woman gets mugged, she immediately says something. She calls the cops, she tells her friends. Woman is sexually assaulted at work, very few of them will say anything because she knows that there will be a very good possibility that no one will listen to her, that she will be blamed, that she'll get fired, that she'll get sued and lose unfairly. So the Me Too movement is important, and the movement to believe more victims and to create systems to invite victims to come forward and protect them as they do so, protect them from people who deny them, that is good. That is important. That is just on a high level. That is justice on a high level. If Superman existed, he'd be on board with this, 100%, the American way. And just because someone comes forward does not mean they're telling the truth. We should definitely help them. We should definitely try to help them to speak their voice. At the same time, we should be careful about the rare situation in which they might be distorted, they might be wrong, they might be lying. It's possible. It's not likely. Very, very small possibility of that happening. By the time someone actually comes forward, they've usually been assaulted 10 times over, and now they're just like, I can't take it. I just have to say something. Or someone else comes forward and they're like, and they see how that person is reacted to. That's what happened with Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, others. Someone comes forward and they're like, oh, that person is being attacked, but it's not horrible, so maybe I can come forward. Then more, and then more, and then more come forward. And know that there are probably hundreds, thousands of other victims of rich, powerful people that we know about, celebrities that we know about, that they have not come forward. Make no doubt about it that 99% of the victims of rich, powerful men are still silent because they see what happens and they don't want to go through it. They get mugged, they report it. They get sexually assaulted by a rich, powerful man, they don't report it because they know. They know what will happen. And the Amber Heard case, I think, has an effect on that. So we need to help, but we do not believe everyone. There are exceptions. They're rare, but they're there. Some people are lying or distorted, confused, whatever. Something's going on, and that's okay. We can allow that inside of our hearts and our minds, that is a possibility. We have to hold on to two opposing forces, help victims come forward, but also know that some people are lying. In the same way that with Bill Cosby, black men had been accused of sexually assaulting women going back centuries in the United States, literally. They were lynched back in the day when these false accusations. A black man would just look at a woman, or even a black teenage boy would just look at, or be seen to look at a white woman in public, and he'd be murdered by not only just a group of white vigilantes, but law enforcement. They'd be there too. Happened all the time. And then that morphed into today's world in which they don't necessarily get murdered. They might. We're still living with that, still happening today. And so when Bill Cosby is being accused by a white woman that he did those things to her, it looks like, oh, this is happening again. It's just another white person accusing a black man of doing something when he never did those things. We need to protect him, and we will. And it was good to have that thought. What's happening? This is another example. Racism, it's happening. But that doesn't mean that Bill Cosby didn't do it. And when more people come forward and all of their stories are almost the same, it's hard to say this is another example of a black man being falsely accused, which is still happening today. That's happening, still happening. But Bill Cosby looks like he actually did it. So let's protect black people. Let's be skeptical of accusations, but let's not immediately deny every single accusation. How do we live with that? It's hard. It takes nuance. It takes wisdom. It takes intelligence. It takes patience. It takes, let's wait. I invite you, victim. I will hug you. I will be with you. I will listen to you. I will protect you. But in my mind, I will wait to find out. I don't say that to the victim. I'm skeptical of you because, some people are, we listen because in all likelihood, they're telling the truth. And they're one of the few people who manage to actually come forward. And think of the hundreds of other people that are behind that person that are watching to see how we react to that person. That's important. But we don't believe automatically everyone who comes forward. Now, maybe Amber Heard was telling the truth. But the idea that some people are being falsely accused should not be lost on us. It's happening. It's rare, but it happens. And so maybe this was justice, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. And maybe this gives falsely accused people who were falsely accused of being abusive, maybe this gives them hope that they can come forward and say, I was falsely accused. Now, we don't know if Johnny Depp was falsely accused. I can't tell. He was clearly abusive in some ways. But there are some people who have been falsely accused who tried to come forward and say, hey, I was falsely accused, and no one believed them. Everyone said, that's what all the perpetrators say, you're a piece of crap. They lost their relationships, they lost their job, they might have gone to prison falsely. That happens. It happens. And it's okay to acknowledge that. It doesn't deny victims to acknowledge that that happens occasionally. It's not very often, but it does happen. So for those people, they deserve justice. Of course. They deserve to be able to say, oh, so sometimes we are heard. And this happened to me one time. It's a much smaller version of this, but it did happen to me, kind of. I'm in college. I'm 18 or 19 years old. I'm in my room and I hear a woman screaming about me in the hallway. I look out my door and I'm thinking, what's happening right now? She's yelling about how I harmed her friend somehow. I don't know exactly what she was accusing me of, but she's yelling and screaming and saying, where is Kirk Honda? Where is he? Slowly close the door because I'm thinking, who is this person? Well, someone points her to my room. She comes to my room and she just starts pounding and pounding and screaming and pounding. And I'm totally confused. And I'm quickly thinking like, okay, because I dated, and I'm thinking, what? Is there someone that I hurt their feelings? I don't understand. But mostly I thought, I think this is a misunderstanding. There must be something wrong here. There's something wrong here. I couldn't think of anything that would cause what she's doing. I opened the door because she's pounding. She was violent. And so I kept my foot, on the door so she wouldn't open the door because I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm looking out and I say, so what's going on? And she's yelling at me. She's enraged. I'll never forget her face, her hair. She's screaming at me. I mean, at least that's how it felt. If you had a videotape of it, maybe it'd be different. So I ask her, who are you talking about? And she names her friend. She says, so-and-so. And I say, I don't know who that is. I think you have the wrong guy. Clearly someone hurt your friend. It wasn't me. I don't even know that person. And so I said, okay, so we've cleared up that issue, and I start to close the door. She bangs on the door. First off, she put her foot. I remember she put her foot like between the door and the door jambs, and then she pushes it open. She basically forced her way in the room, and I don't know what to do. I'm just thinking, is she going to kill me? I don't know. I was terrified. I mean, the look in her eye. She was violent and angry. I thought, does she want to kill me? I don't know what she wants to do here. And she was a lot smaller than me. And I'm thinking, if I get into a scuffle with her, how does this look? So I'm just trying to back away. I'm telling her, I don't know who you're talking about. I don't know who you're talking about. Eventually, I somehow convince her that I don't know who in fact, I think it was, I asked her, are you sure it was me? Did your friend say my name? Because I'm thinking, how would this random person that I don't know mention my name? I don't even know them. Why would they do that? And she says, well, no, she didn't mention your name. And I'm like, well, what did she say? Woman is like, well, my friend said that she was used and abused by a man, and I figured it was you. I'm thinking, you figured it was me? And I didn't have a reputation for that kind of thing. I didn't have time. I'm 19 years old. What could I possibly have done? That would have, I didn't know her. I didn't know her friend. The University of Washington has tens of thousands of people. How did this happen? I still to this day, I don't know. I have no idea how she figured it was me with so much confidence. And so I said, I don't know her, and your friend doesn't know me, but you just figured it was me. Case closed. How about you go back to your friend and ask her the name of the person that used and abused her? And if it's me, then how about she come and talk to me? Because I don't know who that is. And I think that somehow convinced her and sort of got her out of this rut, and she left. So that's a small version. That's not someone falsely accusing me, going to the cops or something. That's happened. Those things happen. People are confused. People lie. People do things. It happens. Just because someone is accusing someone of something doesn't mean that it's true, and doesn't mean that there isn't a lot more data there to fill out the story such that a jury will be like, yeah, that's defamation. So on the plus side, it might really help a lot of people. Give us a little bit of nuance to the MeToo movement. I think we should be careful not to go too far with that nuance and say that like half of people who come forward, particularly women, are lying about it, because of course that's not statistically or scientifically true. But, just a little bit of caution. Before we cancel someone, let's just take a breath. Let's be nice to the victim that's coming forward. Let's listen to them. But as a society, as an employer, as a justice system, let's be caring. Let's assume they probably are telling the truth, but we're not quite sure yet. And let's just wait. Let's wait until we have more data. We need to be a lot more inviting to people who are coming forward. We need to be much more open to what they're saying than we are now. The Me Too movement is not over. And at the same time, we need to say, well, the person they're accusing, I don't know. I wasn't there. And this also potentially raises awareness that men can be victims. It gave me an opportunity to talk about that a little bit more. And a lot of men would email in or comment and saying that they were falsely accused. I don't know if they're telling the truth, but I'm sure some of them, if not all of them, are telling the truth. And it's awful. They are being abused by a woman, by their wife, and the police are called and they're hauled off to prison. That happens. It's rare. It's rare. In heterosexual relationships, most abuse perpetrators are men, but sometimes it's the woman. Absolutely. We all understand that. It also raises awareness for bidirectional or mutual intimate partner violence, something that apparently a lot of people in the public and, frankly, a lot of clinicians didn't even know existed, which I'm like, huh? It's in the research literature. It's also not hard to imagine. I get the reason why people are hesitant about the label, because abuse victims will come forward and then the perpetrator say, well, you hit me that one time, so it's mutual. It cancels each other out. And of course, that's ridiculous. And so there's no such thing as mutual abuse. So I don't know, wait, there is such a thing, but it's often used to keep victims quiet and to continue to control victims. Yes. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It just means that it's used in that way. In the same way that some in heterosexual relationships, sometimes the wife is the abuser. That happens. And a lot of male perpetrators will claim they're the victim when they're not really the victim. So both are true. So I think it raises awareness that men can be victims. I hope it raises awareness for that, because I think we need more of that. It raises awareness for bidirectional IPV. I don't know morally or ethically or as a society how we're supposed to look at bidirectional intimate partner violence. I mean, if they're both abusing each other, it doesn't cancel out. It just means both are abusing each other and both are being abusive, which I kind of think was happening in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard relationship. I don't know. I think it also raises awareness for IPV in general and what verbal abuse can look like. A lot of people, as I will talk in these videos about my experiences treating perpetrators and victims, will email me or contact me and say, hearing your description of abuse, I now realize that I was abused. And so I think that this case helped that. I think it also helped people understand drug abuse a little bit more because it depicted an example of the way that that looks, and that people will say, Johnny Depp was making movies, he was going to interviews, he was walking red carpets, and behind the scenes, he was not doing well. It breaks us away from the stereotype that people who use opiates are strung out and on the streets, which a very small percentage are, but the vast majority are not. I think this also raises awareness for trauma, I hope. PTSD, I hope. I think it also raises awareness for forensic psychology. I wonder how many people, I've been thinking about this the whole time, I wonder how many people will say, I got into forensic psychology because of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. So I think it raises awareness for a lot of things. I hope it does anyway. I mean, the amount of attention it's been getting and the amount of micro bits that people are paying attention to. I want to talk about the future of me and this channel and this podcast and the trial. It feels weird to continue to make episodes about the trial now that the verdict is in, but I've already made so many videos and I've worked so hard on them. The trial videos I am editing meticulously. I spend so many hours editing, so I've already made all those things, and I feel it would bum me out to not publish them. So I don't know if anyone cares to watch it, but I'm going to publish it. Also, I'm going to finish this trial because I'm a completist. I always do what I commit to, even if it doesn't make any sense sometimes. And I committed to watching this whole trial, and I will react to it, and I will post it, whether anyone cares or not. You know, a few people on Discord were like, we don't want to see any more trial stuff. And I apologize. You don't have to click on it. Just don't watch it if you don't want to. But I have to do this for my sake. When I first started watching it, I'm like, what am I going to say to it? And when we started getting into it, there was so much for me to say. There's so much up my alley. I'm an expert in borderline. I'm an expert in histrionic. I don't know many people who are experts in histrionic. I know a fair amount of some people who are experts in borderline, but not many, honestly. I don't know anyone who's an expert on histrionic. In my circle, I don't know anyone. I've treated perpetrators. I was in a domestic violence perpetrator group for men who had been convicted of the crime, forced by law to attend group therapy of perpetrator recovery, where they had to come every week, and we reformed them in various different ways. Broke down their misogyny, broke down their entitlement, worked on their traumas. I've also obviously treated a lot of victims. That's not rare in my field. I'm also trained as a forensic psychologist. And I'm not a forensic psychologist. So on one hand, that hurts me because I don't know as much as I would if I had been practicing as a forensic psychologist all this time. But it also gives me the freedom to criticize the whole thing because I don't lose anything by criticizing the whole industry of forensic psychology. I think it has a lot of worth, but I also think it has a lot of problems. I'm also an expert in PTSD and trauma recovery and complex PTSD and early childhood attachment issues. And, and I'm a couple therapist. I specialize in couple therapy. I specialize in couples with personality disorders and trauma. And so when I started to watch this trial, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much for me to say here. And the things I've never talked about forensic psychology in my podcast, or very rarely. I never get an opportunity to. No one asks me questions about it because I don't think it's interesting. But this trial really gave me an opportunity to talk a lot about it, as you can tell, because I did talk a lot about it. So yeah, I've already recorded a bunch of episodes up till about midway through Amber Heard's testimony on the stand. So after I record this video, I'm going to pick up where I left off, and I'm going to continue watching. So by the time I get through midway through Amber Heard's testimony, I'll be saying things like, and that'll be in a couple weeks from now, by the time that airs. And in that video, I'll say something like, so I already know the verdict. But yeah, in summary, I feel really bad for the two of them. I feel worried for victims, particularly victims of rich, powerful men. I feel worried for the MeToo movement. I do. We had come so far. The MeToo movement was a big deal. And all the conversations it created, the conversations about sexism and misogyny and toxic masculinity, I mean, all that we did, we'll continue to do. We will. This means nothing to me in terms of what I will continue to fight for, what I will fight for you, what you will fight for. This means nothing to that. It's interesting. It's a trial. It's a big media moment. A lot of people paying attention. But we stand right back up and we continue to fight. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.